Peace and blessings, everyone. I just want to thank you all for joining us today. We're coming to you today as the Jails Action Coalition and Halt Solitary Campaign, and we are super excited to have a discussion with each of you who are tuning in with us today around serious concerns right here in New York City and in our state, New York State. And so I just want to introduce myself. I am Chaplain Dr. Victoria A. Phillips. Everyone knows me as Dr. V, and I want to take a brief moment, 45 seconds or less, to quickly introduce you all to those you will be hearing from a little later on. We'll start with Victor. Jump on in here and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Victor Pate. I am one of the co-directors of the Halt Solitary Confinement Campaign, directly impacted person, solitary confinement survivor, connected with a lot of different organizations here in New York and as well as outside of New York doing criminal justice reform / abolition and fighting for better conditions and better treatment of people in our prisons and jails and de-carceration. And I'll pass the mic.
And before we go to the next person, I just want to remind everyone to please take the extra noise in your background away or mute yourself. And we're going to jump right into the next one. Leah, come on and introduce yourself to everyone.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leah Farrier. Excuse my little nasal sinus thing going on here. But I am the Director of Community Engagement at the Women's Community Justice Association, and I am happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to sharing some information with you guys. Thank you, Dr. V.
All right. We're going to jump to the next one. Anissa, come on up, introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Anissa Sabor. I am the National Coordinator to the Unlock the Box campaign. I am a Halt Solitary survivor. I am a member of the Jails Action Coalition, and we come in here today to talk to you about a serious issue that we need your support in. So thanks for joining us, and please stay well.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to move right on over to Justina. I see you next. Introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Justina Rosinski. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and recently I worked on Rikers Island as a clinical supervisor of the mental health units, where I saw the inhumane practice of deadlocking. And last month in October, I testified before the Board of Corrections, which is hopefully leading to an investigation on the practices of deadlocking on Rikers Island.
Thank you so much, and we're going to get into all of that a little later. And Mr. William Still, come on up and let everyone know who you
How are you doing? I'm blessed to be here. My name is Mr. William Still, and I am a member of the Halt Solitary Confinement Campaign movement, in which we so desperately need to understand the truths and the barbaric things that are taking place in our prison systems, and with the Halt Solitary Confinement of placing human beings in the box. I am a justly impacted person who spent 33 years and 7 months in prison for a crime I didn't commit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we definitely will be touching in on your truth and what you're doing to fight to make sure that everybody else does not have to go through it. And so I just very quickly want to say that the reason that we came together today is for humanity, is for the call to ending solitary by any name, and I just want to quickly say the Jails Action Coalition formed in December 2011. And we're a coalition of activists that includes the formerly incarcerated and the currently incarcerated, the family members, community members, who all believe in fighting for human rights, dignity, and safety for people of New York City. And over the years, we've successfully advocated for 16, 17-year-olds to no longer be in solitary confinement and then moved off of Rikers Island. October 2017, okay? We advocated for legislation that includes more transparency around when people are placed in punitive segregation, which is what the Department of Corrections calls solitary confinement. We persuaded the Board of Corrections to develop rules to limit the use of solitary confinement. And then we, furthermore, last year was able to push a bill through, but we'll get into that. We brought to light many conditions throughout New York City jails through rallies, through visuals, through testimony and city council hearings, and the Board of Correction for well over a decade. Brick by brick is how we make change, right? The war is not won by every battle. Okay. And I just want to say that we are a group that continues to meet. We take part in all other coalitions to help fight for our community, but we always come back together for the conditions in the jail. And we always still rally prior to any Board of Corrections meeting. And we talk to policymakers, we advocate, we raise up the conditions and the names, and more importantly, which makes me love Jack the most, is how close we are with the families of those directly impacted. And before I move on and give Victor the opportunity to talk a little about HALT, I just want to say today is a special day, right, amongst our nation when it comes to transgender. And in our coalition, a name that has been raised through many people and elected officials is Laylene. Laylene was a transgender woman who was in Rikers Island, who could not afford bail, and because she could not afford bail, was subjected to barbaric treatment, inhumane confinement when she should not have been, was not given as an Army brat what I believe everyone on domestic soil should be afforded: equity, liberty, and justice. And so today, I thank you all for joining this conversation. I thank you all for the courage it takes to speak publicly, to speak honestly, to speak with accountability at the forefront of everything that you say. And I just want to bring Victor, you there? I want to bring you back up to actually just speak a little bit about what HALT has done over the years. I believe we started in 2012, right? Just that amount of time. Speak to the people and tell them what it means to be a member of HALT, a co-founder of HALT.
So thank you so much, Dr. V. And thank you everybody for tuning in and for your time. So Dr. V mentioned that, this is a collaborative effort between Jails Action Coalitions and the HALT Solitary Confinement Campaign, which he already indicated when we got together. And as a result of the collaboration working together, we came together and were able to put a legislative bill together that was introduced in the New York State Assembly and the New York State Senate in 2013 to restrict the amount of time that people can be held in solitary confinement, as well as create alternative units for people to receive treatment, to receive opportunity to have out of cell time, and to have transformative, rehabilitative, and therapeutic program. So what does that look like? It took us, I think, about maybe 8 or 8.5 years in consistent advocacy, collaborative work together to bring education not only to our community, but to our legislators. And as a result of this 8-year campaign that we done, we were successful in getting the HALT Solitary Confinement Act passed in 2021. Subsequent to 2021, the application implementation date was in 2022. This bill that we crafted together was applicable not only to New York State prisons, but as well as New York City jails. You heard Dr. V mention about the work that has been done in restricting solitary confinement on Rikers Island. And we were successful in getting a bill passed in the New York City Council that restrict the implementation of solitary confinement as it's being implemented on Rikers Island. Subsequent to its implementation date, which was supposed to be in July of this year, our mayor entered a suspension executive order not suspending some parts of the bill on Rikers Island being implemented. As it relates to the state, solitary confinement. The bill is currently in effect, right? We were successful in getting the institutions to institute the programs that we had in the bill that indicated that people were supposed to receive alternative treatment after a 15-day period if they receive a SHU sanction. What happens is that there is what's considered the residential rehabilitative units, and this is where people are sent after the 15-day period in solitary confinement, where they will receive treatment, therapeutic training, and have an opportunity to have some type of rehabilitation. Now, this work didn't end because the bill got passed. That was just the beginning. And we are currently and consistently advocating for its full implementation on both levels, not only on the state level, but as well on the city level. And we are advocating together, as Dr. V indicated, Jails Action Coalition Halt Solitary Confinement Campaign. We've always kind of sort of like worked side to side, side by side, and we will continue to work side by side. There are so many different components that we have to pay attention to when we're talking about bills getting passed, because your work is not over once the bill gets passed. That's actually the beginning. The work starts when the implementation period starts, and that's
Yes,
where I
yes, yes.
so I'm going to pass the mic from this particular point, and I'll share some more later. Thank you.
All right, all right. Thank you. You know, I was coming for you to say, brother, we got to get the conversation going. Yes, because listen, when you do this work, it's a lot to be said, okay? And we have history on how these things work. Okay, so I just want to actually get the conversation really going, and so the people could really hear, you know, the directly impacted folks. So I just want to bring to the conversation, and Nisa, I want to bring you up. How I just want to jump in, sis. So you ready to jump in with me?
Mhm. Let's
How
go,
have
sis.
you seen solitary confinement impact individuals and families in your community? And then I want to add to that, what personal experiences drive your advocacy against solitary confinement?
So thank you so much for that, Dr. V. Thank you, Victor, for speaking about the history. So yeah, in the many years that I have been impacted by solitary confinement as someone who actually lived through solitary confinement and all of its barbaric practices, I see the detriments that it has not only on individuals, but families and communities. So yeah, solitary confinement is torture. It's deadly. You mentioned Laylene, right? Um, Solitary confinement literally killed her, right? And I actually want to make sure that people understand that people die from the practice of solitary confinement. And this is why I do the work that I do today, to help others not go through what I went through or to lose their lives or their loved ones. So yeah, so what pushes me to do the advocacy is that I don't want to see people lose their lives. You know, our system was supposed to be designed to rehabilitate people who had made a mistake in their life. That's not what it does. Solitary is torture. It tortures people. It it's dehumanizing. It deteriorates people's mental, physical, psychological, and spiritual life. And so, yeah, so all of that pushes me to advocate to make sure that, especially our young people, don't have to go through what I went through and the experience of solitary confinement in a way that some of us don't come back from. So I will continue to advocate to make sure that solitary is ended, not only in our city in New York, in our state in New York, but across this country. So I will continue this work. It's hard work. You mentioned it, Dr. V, and it's us. We have to do it, right? And so I just want to say thank you to all of y'all, because for all the work that we've done over the years, we can begin to see now, right, that it was worth it, right? We have helped so many people, right, who have been in solitary confinement actually be able to speak about it. A lot of people couldn't do it before. I know I couldn't in the beginning. But using my experience, and like Victor said, really getting elected to understand the torture, that we actually make sure that everybody knows what's done behind that wall is torture. And that's not what people go and get incarcerated for. They get incarcerated to be rehabilitated and be held accountable, not to be tortured and not to be murdered. And solitary is murder because it kills people. And that's just one thing I want to say. So I'm going to stop there and pass the mic back.
Thank you so much, Anissa, and you made so many valid points, and I just want to reiterate. Solitary does kill people, and that's a fact, right? And so, when we talk about Laylene, I want to say that the reason that is super important. I had to put my computer back in charge. The reason that it's super important that I brought Laylene's name up is because Trans Day of Remembrance, right? Where we honor people, where we remember their name, their legacy. And we also have a responsibility as a society to say that the issues are not separate.
Mm-hmm.
The abuse, even as we say Black and brown, the most incarcerated, right? Laylene represented that, still was part of our Black and brown community. And when we talk about justice, when we talk about our efforts to end solitary, to decarcerate, to protect human rights, Laylene was worthy of all of that. My God, $500 bail one could not afford and ended up with their life being lost. And I want to reiterate that because the media showed a video of officers behind the wall laughing at Laylene. Do not forget that part. So when we say accountability, you said people go to jail to be rehabilitated, not to be murdered. But who's responsible for that rehabilitation? Who's responsible for that implementation? Because what I've seen working behind the walls, it does not exist, nor does accountability. But I'm not going to start preaching. I want to give space. And so I actually want to bring up Mr. Still. And I want to ask you, how does solitary confinement affect your relationships and ability to reintegrate into society?
Oh, well, that is a good question that I'd love to answer. Uh, I spent 33 years incarceration, litigating and fighting into the courts and dealing with DOCCS. They use solitary confinement to particularly break individuals down who has the tenacity to challenge any of their regulations. So I was a victim of clear retaliations on all levels of the administration because of my knowledge acquired of law and fighting their policies and practices. It has affected me to a strong degree because I'm still acclimating into society, learning the new things. Remember, it was in 33 years, and I'm still trying to put the perspectives in order so that I can move forward. But my main driven point is when you receive, I say that I received two injustices. One, I was in jail illegally because I was Black and intelligent, and I posed a pervasive threat to their judicial system. And then two, you put me behind bars for something that I knew nothing about, and then you torture me when I fight my way out of prison because I want to study law. Being in SHU, I watched the human minds, and repeatedly being in SHU, I witnessed the death, the spiritual, the moral, and the conditions that solitude or that confinement creates within a human being. And I watched the suffering of individuals, and it was not so much that I had to suffer, but however, I watched the suffering of other human lives and the impact on their families that come to visit them in the visiting rooms. And you see the horror of it. And no person in its correct moral standing can actually sit down and say that they are willing to accept this as a practice and a condition. Myself in returning back to society, it's been very difficult. The travel has been difficult, but I will adjust. But I thank God for the gift of fortitude because many are not given that gift to actually execute that site of fortitude to sustain that torturous process, either psychologically spiritually, emotionally, or whatever they may have been already going through, being placed in that type of condition and setting. It creates all sorts of decentral, you decentralize. You just have, it just breaks you down to his Lord, that you do not want to have any types of socialization with no one. You're trying to find your inner sanctuary, your mental peace. You're trying to find something to escape that darkness of life. But when I how it affected me was it made me angry. And that anger is channeled into now protesting and out here now to gravitate and to let these people know that it is not just solitary confinement. It is the people who are executing the laws that we are out here that are executing that, because the acts that was perpetuated upon me were deliberate to destroy me, to break me in every form, shape, form, and fashion that they can. And I watch individuals kill themselves, feces in their mouths, all things about inhumane treatment that I can't even society wouldn't even believe it. And what happens is, I've always wanted to, the anger had driven me to particularly hold those accountable for carrying this out, because they know what they're doing, and they're doing it up under a color of law that they're doing it. And it's a lot of what's plagued with that. There is a lot of systemic racism, primarily not systemic, it's blatant racism in the prison systems to break the human being, particularly the black and brown people, down to a system. It's not there to rehabilitate you. Even with the new implementation of the HALT Act, prior to me being released, they wanted to retaliate against me so bad, they threw me in the box without a hearing. And when they threw me in the box without a hearing, they just kept me in the box for 45 days to send me back to a third parole board. Now, what transpired with this was, I have a captain who sat there, knocked on my door, and told me, this is what you get on the way out the door. So it is a deliberate racial practice. When you stand up to anything or oppose any of the barbaric practices that they do, they use the box as a torturous means to kill an individual's spirit, to kill his mind, to kill his heart, and to kill his physical composition. And it reaches out to the families that are in society as well, because they have loved ones. We have loved ones out here that were trying to support you and to keep us stable in the condition that we were suffering. So it has a grave impact on the children that I watched before them closing Southport down. They used to bring their children up there. And you can see the sadness in the child's eyes as a result of seeing the parent under these inhumane conditions and wondering why, as he's developing or she's developing, why are they doing this to my daddy? I actually heard those words in the visiting room. Why are they doing this to him? He doesn't have the answer to tell them. I don't even think at the time he's even consciously aware that they even teach his child or what is actually happening to him, because they're so broken down from a psychological and a mental perspective by being placed in that box. It creates all sorts of delusional tactics. It creates it has all sorts of psychological impacts on you, because one thing you have to live with yourself in that cell and in that sanctuary. And in that sanctuary, if an individual does not have, like I said, the gifted form of fortitude, everyone has, no human being is perfect.
I want to jump in here because you said several things that just took me back. You spoke about the kids, you spoke about isolation, and even in your adult experience, I immediately thought about Khalif Browder here in the city. So many elected officials around the Rikers situation knew solitary confinement was a big factor in why he's no longer here with us. And when you talk about the trauma and the pain, the PTSD, the anger, anger is an emotion, right? And I think of the anger that Khalif expressed being in the box. I think of the anger his family, his brother, his mother expressed. May she rest in peace. of having not being able to protect her son, to protect her loved one, his brother, not being able to protect his brother, his loved one, not being able to protect his mother from the pain of losing one of her sons, um, and and the pain, the anger that comes with seeing administrations come in and go out, and no one necessarily fulfilling the promise that they give to the directly impacted or the family members when they say, we too will fight with you for justice. We too will hold docs accountable for the things that they've done. And just to keep the conversation going, I know the Jails Action Coalition years ago, we fought with other comrades to remove a certain practice behind the walls in the medical aspect. You know, there was a for-profit company that was behind the walls. And in 2015, we actually did a big campaign and got city council to remove them. And brought in brought in the city, CHS, Correctional Health Services. And I'm saying that for a reason, because my next guest that I want to bring up is going to speak to the aspect of correctional health services. However, I always believe in acknowledging where change is, taking place and where good things have occurred. And so I just want to highlight, although things still need to occur and be done correctly, the medical aspect of the trauma behind the walls was even greater just a few years ago. And it was so much so that advocates had to fight because of the barbaric conditions. And I'm laying it out like this for a reason, because that was January 2016, I believe, CHS took over the medical services for Rikers Island and all of the Department of Corrections facilities in New York City. And here we are in 2024, almost at 2025. And yet I need to highlight how still barbaric and inhumane many times the conditions can end up being while someone is incarcerated in Rikers Island. And so I want to bring Justina up, and I want to invite you to the conversation as a clinician. And I want to ask, can you share with us some of your experiences working on Rikers Island and what you saw to be the impacts of solitary confinement, including the horrific practice of deadlocking, which they say doesn't occur?
Yes, thank you so much. So I started as a clinical supervisor working on Rikers Island last year, December 2023. And my last day was this year, September. And going in, I believe that there was no solitary confinement for people with a severe mental illness. Those are the units that I would supervise. But quickly, as I began working there, I witnessed my patients being locked in for weeks and weeks, and some even for months. And because of their serious mental illness, they decompensated very quickly, because once they were locked in, they did not have any access to their medications. The medications would come on the unit, on the floor, but when somebody's locked in, they can't come out to get their medications. And this is not just their psych medications, this is all medications. So even individuals that have a serious medical condition, they would not get their medications. And as they stayed being deadlocked, I saw them decompensate. They would smear feces, bang, scream all day and night. The cells were filled with flies. And this is how they woke up, went to sleep, and ate their dinner, breakfast, lunch. And eventually we would have to send them to the hospital, hoping that Bellevue would accept them, or that they go to OMH, because a lot of them were 730 patients. And I've tried really hard.
Wait, I want to jump in real quick, because we have many people listening today, right? And for those who might see this in the future, what is OMH and what is 730? Just really quickly, just so everyone can know.
So OMH is Office of Mental Health. There's two facilities, Mid-Hudson and Forensic Kirby. And when someone is found unfit to continue with their court proceedings, they are sent to OMH to be restored to fitness. In OMH, they're able to take their medications. They're not locked in. They do groups. They're provided with treatment. Once they're restored to fitness, they come back to Rikers and now can move forward with their court proceedings, because these individuals are severely mentally ill and they do not understand at that time what it means to plead guilty or not plead guilty, or the role of the lawyer. So a lot of times the officers wouldn't want these individuals to come out, so we would just hope and hope, like, okay, soon this patient is going to go to OMH and get better. And there were very, very few officers that would work with us and allow the patients to come out, but they weren't there every day. And sometimes they were on vacation. And we already knew which officers wouldn't allow the patients out. And a lot of times they were locked in because the patient disrespected the officer, um, was verbally aggressive. It wasn't even anything physical. And then once the individual is locked in, they would smear feces, like I stated, and the officers would say, well, now this individual is smearing feces, I can't let him out. And I would say, like, okay, but he's smearing feces because he's locked in, or I can't let him out because he's banging and screaming. But this was all a result of them being locked in. And this was not just in my mental health unit, this was in all of the mental health units in the jail that I worked in GRVC, and it happens in the other jails as well. I would often cover other units. I would speak to my coworkers about it. This was a standard practice. And this was happening way before I got there. When I got there, they were not trying to hide it. It wasn't a secret. And it was really difficult because they were not documenting this anywhere because they're not supposed to be doing it. So a lot of times I would come to work on Monday and I would have 15 of my patients locked in. And I would ask the officers, like, why are 15 patients locked in? And they would say, well, I don't know. I wasn't here on the weekend. And I couldn't even do my work. I couldn't sit on the unit in my office while I have my patients screaming and banging, yelling, help, help, all day and night. I couldn't even eat my lunch sometimes on the unit in my office because I could smell the feces. I remember even once I called my mom during lunch just to check in, and she was like, Justina, who is screaming like that? And I said, one of the patients. It was just torture. And I really went into Rikers because I always wanted to work with this population and I really wanted to help. And I saw that I wasn't really able to help. Like, I had one patient who finally I was able to get him out. He did great all week. Monday, I come back, he's locked in. I ask the officers and they say, well, we're not really sure, but another female officer from the other side came to get water and he was looking at her sexually inappropriate and made her uncomfortable. So we locked him back in. And now this individual is smearing again and tearing up his mattress and screaming while he did well for a whole week being locked out. And like I said, these individuals also have serious medical conditions and they're not getting their medications for that as well. So I saw very quickly that I'm not able to make a difference. And I felt really, I felt so guilty when I decided to resign because I felt so bad for my patients and I felt like I was abandoning them. And that's why I made a promise to myself that I'm going to continue fighting for them, but from the outside where I can really make a difference. And I was able to connect with New York County defenders. They helped me testify before the Board of Corrections, set me up with all of the interviews, and I continue being involved in all of these amazing organizations. And I've met so many incredible people, and I continue to fight for my patients.
And we thank you for it. And I just want to say, there's a couple of times where you said you weren't effective, that you couldn't do anything for them. And I want you to know you were effective, you are effective, and you will continue to be effective. I personally started publicly speaking out against what I saw behind the walls while working in 2012. And I've continued to be effective with my comrades who also do the work in different ways. And so I just want to encourage you to find your level of comfort. There's a space for everyone in the movement at different places, but don't stop. Continue to develop your voice, continue to push your expertise around this situation out to the forefront, because that is how you continue to save lives. I connect with you when you talked about how you felt, because there were many days where I would drive across the bridge leaving Rikers Island in full tears because I felt guilty to leave them behind. But that just drives what I do in the community and in the forefront and at city council and in Albany, to hold people accountable. And I just want to highlight, when you speak of the people who have mental health concerns, for those of you who might not know, about 53% of those in Rikers Island Department of Corrections custody right now have a mental health concern. And about 20% of them are diagnosed with serious mental illness. So I want you to really think of those numbers when you think of who's being detained. Why are they being detained? I also want to jump in and say before I move on to the next question is when you spoke of seeing someone with feces spread across them, I remember seeing the same thing. And I also remember different contexts of witnessing this behind the walls. And I want to say one of them because I think it's important to also bring the humanity back to those listening. I remember a woman saying that she spread feces across her to stop officers from raping her. So that is, when your mind thinks, how can someone rub feces across themselves? I want you to think about what one's environment must be for them to even think in any capacity that that is okay for them, or that that is maybe even a survival mechanism for them behind the walls. And then what is going on in correctional settings that someone would feel that need of survival has to be done. So I actually want to bring Victor into the conversation. Victor, you with us? All right. I don't know, Victor, if you come back, that's fine. I'm going to move on. Leah, I want to bring you into this conversation as well. So, sis, what challenges do you see when addressing mental health issues for women in solitary confinement, and what reforms are needed?
Okay, well, Dr. V, we have to just look at the fact that women in gender expansive populations enter Rikers Island with, um, traumas and vulnerabilities that get exacerbated, right, by solitary confinement. You had mentioned the stats just a little while ago, right, that over 80%, right, of the population at the Rosem Singer Center at Rikers Island have a mental health concern, and over 20% has a serious mental health concern. And that makes it extremely challenging to be able to address the mental health needs of women and gender expansive people, right? Because you have a few you have this, I'm gonna give you some challenges, right? You have the past traumas that they enter with, you have the isolation and the effects of that, and the sensory deprivation that occurs that William spoke on about a little bit. And then you have the lack of gender specific care, right? And when somebody is confined to solitary confinement, even if we're gonna say even in general population, they have limited access to mental health and trauma support. But just imagine being in solitary confinement, that is, they're even restricted even more. So these are the things that are highlighted, right, and gets extremely exacerbated when somebody is detained or locked up in solitary confinement. But when we talk about challenges, we have to talk about reforms, right? And top of the list is going to be ending solitary confinement, which is implementing in totality local law 42, right? That is going to definitely, step it up, and it's going to reduce a lot of the harms and the traumas that are happening and the re-traumatizations that are happening inside of the jails and prisons, right? So we have to talk about another reform could be increased mental health and trauma support, right? And we could also talk about training, right? Training the staff to be more trauma informed, because if the staff is more trauma informed, then we could look at the fact that they're able to be a benefit, right, to the population that they're supposed to be serving. And that in itself would, equip people to be able to work through the trauma, because you never get over it. You have to work through it, and work through it so that they can be, productive members of society as they re-enter when their time comes. And I'm going to keep it brief, but I just wanted to really, reiterate the fact that, women and gender expansive populations have unique traumas, right? For a long time, they have been, excluded from a seat at the table. So now that we have them at the table, we're going to make sure that we keep them relevant, we keep them highlighted, right? Because these are our mothers, our daughters, our sisters, and our caregivers that are being removed from the community. And like Anissa also stated, that it's not just the individual that's being incarcerated, it's the families as well as the communities. So I just want you to kind of like sit with that, and I'm going to give it back to Dr. V.
Thank you so much. And you are truly, truly correct. The nurturers of the community. 77% of the women in Rikers right now, non-gender conforming population, go in being the primary caregiver. And I always raise that point on any platform because if they're the primary caregivers, who's taking care of home? And then who did they leave at home? It might be children, it might be loved ones, it might be elders that depend on them. So what does it look like why can't we divert them? One, why aren't we properly taking care of them if they must be detained? And upon re-entry, why aren't we allowing them the proper stability to return home, to maintain housing, to rejoin their families, to focus on their kids and their vocational training? We spend almost $600,000 per individual on Rikers Island. Per individual a year. $556,000. That's housing, that's vocational training, that's your health care insurance, that's everything one needs, and it still don't add up to $500,000 on the outside. Am I wrong? Am I right or am I right? So what are we doing here? Anissa, I want to bring you back. I want to bring you back into the conversation. What role does community advocacy play in driving change, and how can we build coalitions to strengthen these efforts?
So thank you, Dr. V. So I say we continue to fight. We continue to push our electeds to make sure that they understand the need for change. We continue to allow people who have been impacted to be at the forefront. Leah said it, like highlighting and centering the family members of those who are impacted by this barbaric system that we have here, right? I think for me, advocacy is the best way to show people that change is possible, and really like highlighting and uplifting those who have been most impacted. They need to be at the forefront.
Agree.
I'm gonna stay right here.
Look, I know that's right. I agree with you. And Victor, looks like we got you back. Are you with us, brother?
Yeah, I'm back. Could you hear me?
All right, I hear you, and I got a question for you. All right.
Okay.
So, how does the fight to end solitary confinement intersect with broader criminal justice reform efforts? There's another part. Jack and Hall often demand that officials not only end solitary, but release people and stop sending people to deadly jails. So, can you share why the campaigns have these additional goals?
Thank you so very much for that. So, I think just firstly out of the gate, when we talk about the work that we do and how it intersects across so many different platforms and stuff like that, we have to also expand on the human toll, as well as the toll on the community. And when you're talking about people that are exposed to solitary confinement, barbaric treatment, torture, etc., I think this is one of the goals that Holt and Jack find that sticks out so prevalent in the work that we do, because of the toll, the impact that it had, the collateral damages, right? People don't go into solitary confinement and not be affected. It just does not happen. And some more so than others, but the work that we are doing, is about bringing humanity back into the picture, and our coalition work is based on humanity and the treatment and fair treatment of people that are in our prisons and jails, so that hopefully when they return back to our community, they can return back as people able to be productive, as they say, return as a productive citizen. Well, we fight for those opportunities. We fight and amplify the platforms of humane treatment, decarceration, right, and family connections. This is the basic core of the work that we do, because it's all public facing. No matter, you can't get around public safety. You can't get around public health. And all this has a toll, and all of it is interrelated, no matter, because of the people are incarcerated. They are still a part of our community. they will be returning to our community. And if they are not treated humanely, they will return broken and unable to be a productive citizens, as supposedly be one of the functions of correctional facilities, to return people back better. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen, and this is why we fight, and this is why we'll continue to do the work that we do.
Thank you so much. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, Doctor.
Very good. Thank you. I just want to actually take your points and step in now as clergy, and shout out the clergy that's out there that's listening or probably will see this, and just remind you all of your duty to the Most High and how you obtained the titles that you did. And I often say things like that behind the walls to other clergy members, because humanity is key. And when you have a title or position of leadership that can save lives, I believe you're supposed to utilize it to do so. And right now I'm asking any clergy that's hearing this message, if you know of someone in the prison ministry, a jail ministry, has access behind correctional walls, to tap in and hold your peers accountable, to make sure they too are doing their job, to fight for humanity, to fight for what's right, to fight for the things that they know the Lord would condone. And there's so much more that can be said. And quickly, I'll just say, years ago, I know as a chaplain, I had to bring a petition before the Board of Corrections to show how valuable chaplains were behind the walls, and how even when someone might not have access to mental health staff, because we all know they don't come around every 28 days like the law says they should, they utilize chaplains. And many times I myself have had to step in the place of a mental health professional, although I had to step in the place behind the walls to assist someone who had suicidal ideations, to assist someone who couldn't understand why they were being railroaded by the system in a place where the officers seemed to hate them. And like Justina said, had possible other medical conditions, but because they were placed in solitary confinement, none of them were being addressed. And I want y'all to think about that at home. So the next time you go into your bathroom, I want you to step into your tub. And I want you to think, what would it be if this was the only space I had? And I'm not talking about you who have elaborate bathrooms with beautiful windows and things like that. I'm talking about those of us who have box-like bathrooms with no window, with no air quality, to change, just walls or maybe tiles. And I want you to look at the tiles and think, my God, if I had no other interaction with humans, could I count these tiles? How many days would it take? How many hours? How many times would I have to restart because my mind wandered, went away? When someone comes home from incarceration, we need to be gentle with them, because something as touching someone's shoulder, we don't know the environment they just came from, if they even had that experience in the last week or year. We don't know how they're returning to us. All we know is that they've possibly been harmed. They've possibly been triggered in many ways that can tear down their psyche, tear down their confidence, tear down their idea of even having support. And I'm just taking a moment because I really want those who have never experienced solitary or never witnessed someone going through the trauma of solitary to truly pause and think how drastic solitary confinement is. Would you approve of someone putting you in the trunk of a car? No. And I say that because it's lights out, the temperature you can't control, you're at the mercy of whoever to open up the door. That's how it is being in that cage. You're at the mercy of whatever officer is on tour to hear your cry. Victor, I want to bring you back up. Can you explain New York City's recent ban of solitary confinement, Local Law 42, all right? How it was enacted, its current status, and current efforts to demand implementation. Let's go.
Good. Thank you again. And I'm going to be really quick on this one here. So, of course, it's a collaborative effort between, HALT and Jails Action Coalition. to get the local law. At the time, it was known as Intro 549A. Now it's known as Local Law 42. And we were successful in the collaborative efforts in us getting our New York City Council to pass this bill that will restrict the use of solitary confinement back in January. And it's just so ironic that not only did we have to go twice on it here, because the first time they passed it, our mayor, he vetoed the bill. And they came right back after that and they overrode his veto. So now, as a result of the city council overriding of the mayor's veto, we now have local law 42 on the books. However, on the books and not in effect, as it should be, because our illustrious mayor, when it was supposed to be implemented back in July, he put in an executive order and he claiming that there was an emergency on Rikers Island. There's always been an emergency on Rikers Island. I don't ever remember when it wasn't, back in 1970 when I was there. So it's always an emergency. But how does that affect them not using that as a justification for them not implementing local law 42? I think that this is just something that the mayor did because of the fact that he does not want to be told how these jails are supposed to be run. He supports law enforcement. He's a former law enforcement himself, and I believe no matter what his title is, he's still the cop he was back then in a different form. So with regards to this here law, it is not fully implemented because there's a currently executive law that is suspending some parts of the bill being fully implemented as it should be. This is one of the continuing advocacy efforts that we are continuing to do. We are pushing for full and complete implementation of local law 42. And as Dr. V points out, this is a collaborative effort between we the people, Jails Action Coalition, and the Halt Solitary Confinement Coalition.
And we just want to give a shout out to the Public Advocate's Office for bringing, come on now, the sponsors. Victor, you want to go into that?
I'm sorry, I missed that piece.
I said, do you want to give a shout out to the sponsors?
Oh, the city council of the bill. Yeah, Jamani Williams, our illustrious Jamani Williams, public advocate, was the primary sponsor of, at the time known as Intro 549A and now known as Local Law 42, as well as other city council members.
And I just want to throw in very quick, because, you know, I always give praise where it's due. In 2014, we brought forth and we did a campaign to end solitary confinement for 16 to 21-year-olds in New York City jails. That was brought forth with former Councilmember Danny Drum. Just wanted to give a shout out because that was where the efforts truly came from. And from then, we have still been fighting to do it for everyone. And we need our law implemented. That's where you all come in. You know, we the people actually spoke. You know, it would have been a very sad day if the mayor had vetoed our bill and we didn't have supermajority. Supermajority is when you have enough votes that regardless of whether the mayor vetoes something, the bill can still occur. And we had supermajority when the bill was voted. We had supermajority when the bill was override with the mayor's veto. And so that means we the people still expect the bill that we put into place to be implemented. That is where you can show up to your elected officials and demand that the bill that you voted for as people be implemented. Period. We the people have spoken. That's what makes it different of living in a democracy. We the people make the rules. Okay, and so I just want to bring Anissa back up really quick to talk about calls to action, to talk about the National Unlock the Box campaign and how it aligns with the broader movement to end solitary confinement across the U.S. Because we want to make change here. We want to make change tri-state. We want to make change everywhere. So, Anissa, are you still with us? Okay, I'm not seeing her. She'll be joining us coming back. So we'll just move right on. Okay, well, Victor, you're here. So do you want to jump in for Anissa and talk about Unlock the Box campaign? We seem to be having technical difficulties. Okay, are you with us now? Okay. All right, y'all. This is how it is. This is real life, right? So we're gonna make it work. And so we're gonna go right now to any questions in the comments. I can't see the comments. Is there any questions? All right. Well, it seems that I've lost two of my panelists.
That's interesting.
It's interesting and it's real life. So we're going to just move on forward. And I just want to I'm not sure if you've all seen the websites going across your screen, but
No, I don't have that.
no, not you. The people. All right. All right. And so well, while we're closing up, I just want to give another 30 to 60 seconds to the panelists who still are here. Do you have any last thoughts?
Yes. If I may, I believe and I see from an experience that there you have two different levels. They talk about the local bills. You have two different levels. You have the state and the city who are implementing these practices with placing people in the box arbitrarily through dysfunctional systems. I believe that the only way that those practices will come into its application as laws that are written is that we have to have those who are responsible in these civic service practices and these positions to be held accountable for holding that and executing those practices. Do you know that they're actually committing murder under the color of law against a human being in the course of practice? You know, you can carry out an administrative practice and actually in the course of carrying, you're committing a crime against the people. You're committing a crime against another human being. You're committing a crime against a society when they carry out the practice by not implementing or instilling into these Rikers Islands and these upstate prisons by following the laws that are in place for them to follow as civic service employees. It's never going to stop because no one is being held accountable for their civic positions in carrying out these laws.
Yes.
I've watched it time and time again, and I've heard it time and time again from those higher ups in DOCCS.
Yes. I just want to, for the sake of time, I hear what you're saying, and I think the next person I'm bringing up could actually tap into how we can start making those changes, and also tell us a little bit about Unlock the Box campaign so that we can make sure this is a fight that is truly implemented across the nation before I go into questions in the chat. So Scott, I want to bring you on so that you could tell the people, just in a few moments about Unlock the Box campaign. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. This has been an incredible panel. So grateful for you all and grateful to be part of this movement. The Unlock the Box campaign is a national campaign to end solitary confinement. It supports local grassroots campaigns all across the country that are led by people who've lived through solitary or had family members in solitary and are fighting to demand an end to solitary and to dismantle this entire carceral system. And so the Unlock the Box campaign, you can see the address, unlocktheboxcampaign.org. You can find out more information there. But it's really a collective of different grassroots campaigns all across the country, like what's happening here in New York. And it also is pushing for legislation at the national level to end solitary confinement, following the lead of New York and other states that have already made change, trying to push this agenda nationally. So we all need to end solitary. We need to end it now. And I hope everybody can support. I'm going to, if it's okay, Dr. V, I'm just going to answer two of the quick questions that I see from the audience, at least to start, and then others can jump in. One is about what elected officials do you have support from besides the public advocate? And I just wanted to reiterate what both Dr. V and Victor said earlier, that basically in New York, we have a super majority of New York City elected officials and New York State elected officials. In 2021, a super majority, that means 2/3 of all legislators in New York State passed the halt solitary confinement law. That's in both the Assembly and the Senate. And in New York City in 2023 and then in 2024 with a veto override, a supermajority of the New York City Council passed the local law 42 to ban solitary entirely. So we know the public is behind us, the lawmakers are behind us, and it's time for New York City to finally do what the people have been demanding they do for years and years, and that's finally end solitary confinement. And let's also release people and get people home. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And you know what I just thought about? Like, listening to you, we're talking about corrections. We're talking about authority. And yet, those in authority fail to follow the law. But the very reason that people are allegedly put in jails because they allegedly broke the law. Where am I going with this? We're a hypocritical society. And so absolutely. So we're going to drop in the chat some petitions that you can sign. Am I right, Scott? Some petitions that you can sign to get involved. I see a question. What can be done to amplify pressure on Mayor Adams with unions and civil orgs to get signed into law? Any panelists want to go for that? Scott, I see you smiling.
I'm happy to jump in, but others should jump in too. Listen, that's the exact right question. That's what we're here for. Listen, the law is already passed. It's already the law of New York City, local law 42, and it's time for the mayor and the Department of Correction to follow the law. So yes, any unions, any civil organizations that should step up, join with us, join the Jails Action Coalition, join the Halt Solitary campaign, sign this petition that you see across your screen, and let's do whatever we can to push the mayor to tell him he has to follow the law in order to stop torture, save lives, and to make us all safer. So thanks for the question, and keep joining with us, keep partnering with us. We got the law passed. Now it's time to ensure that our officials follow the law and go further to get people out of these deadly jails.
And you can send any questions to info@jailsactioncoalition.com. You can also send any inquiries to sign on to calls. We'll put you on the listserv so that you can join our calls and effectively start planning actions with us. Like I said before, there's room for everybody in this movement. You can get in at any level of comfort that you feel. If you just want to make copies of flyers for us, if you want to help pay for a bus to Albany, there are so many different things. If you want to give your expertise, your legal expertise, whatever it is at your level of comfort, if it's going to help push the movement forward, you're more than welcome to come aboard. It takes all of us. Hello, everyone. Just want to highlight the horrible conditions on Rikers Island are from Rosie still have not changed. I will continue to do my part to help in this movement. Treatment, not jails. Also a great coalition. We know that most of the women and gender expansive folks on Rikers could benefit from alternative to incarceration programs. Those are considered ATIs, closed Rikers. Absolutely, absolutely, Lola. And thank you so much for that. Appreciate all the brothers and sisters on here. Yes, I just want to say I thank all of you for joining today. I want to thank my amazing panelists. Scott, thank you as well for jumping in last minute, unexpected. Thank everyone behind the scenes, Jane. Thank you all, because it takes a team. And I just want to reiterate, educate and organize, right? Community, not cages. What's up, y'all? That's right. Look, I get excited when I see my comrades. Yes, because it takes us as a collective. And there's always 3 areas that I say I focused on: community, health, and justice. They overlap in so many ways. And I think that if you focus in those areas, you're always giving back. So if you don't have time to do anything else, I would ask that you just share what you've watched today. I would ask that you share any links, the petition. If you don't have any other time to do anything else, you can do that. Just take a moment to share the information that could possibly save someone's life. I thank you. We raise every name because I never want any family member to feel left out. We raise every name that has been traumatized by solitary, that life has been lost because of barbaric conditions and solitary confinement. We honor you. We honor your loved ones. And we are still here for all families, whether you've seen us a week ago, a year ago, 5 years ago. We're still here for you. And together we fight. Again, sign the petition, sign the petition, sign the petition. I thank all my panelists. Peace and blessings, everyone. From the Jails Action Coalition and Holt